We want to thank you for following the Looking Forward Our Way podcast. Do you know we also have a newsletter?
Yeah, our goal with the newsletter is to never waste your time or fill your inbox with email landfill.
Each newsletter is quick and easy to read and keeps you updated on what we are working on as well as what is coming up on the next podcast.
You'll see some newsletter items come and go, but we'll always be respectful of your time and inbox clutter. And we always encourage recycling, so send the newsletter along to a friend or a family member.
Sign up by clicking on the link in the show notes or go to our website, lookingforwardourway.com. Thanks again for following and listening to Looking Forward Our Way.
So being a weight-bearing exercise is wonderful for our muscles, our bones. I think there is a misconception out there that walking, isn't enough, but it is. It is definitely enough, and the studies bear that out over and over. So it also makes our heart much more efficient. It pretty much, you name it, walking or whatever physical activity you enjoy will take care of it.
We are looking forward our way from Studio C in the 511 Studios in the Brewery District in downtown Columbus. This is Brett, and with me, as always, is Carol. Are you ready to take a walk today?
I am, Brett. I'm feeling great. Had my COVID vaccine shots, and I just finished the Walk with a Doc Grand Canyon Adventure. And last November, I was walking with the doc in Kilimanjaro, and we had these virtual excursions. They were much fun. And we're so excited that Walk with a Doc is our featured program today on the podcast. It's a phenomenal organization, and I really wanted to bring this group to our podcast audience. And no surprise, this great organization began right here in Columbus. Our guest today is Dr. David Sabgir, founder, mentor, CEO, board president, and bearer of all things avocado for Walk with a Doc. Dr. David, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Brett.
You bet. Hey, that first sentence on your website, Walk with a Doc is made up of healthcare professionals and walk warriors around the globe who are driven by an earnest belief that walking is the miracle drug destined to change the world. It's a great statement, and one that I think so many of us are trying to meet. Tell us about yourself and how Walk with a Doc was conceived.
Sure. Thank you both for having me. It's an honor to be here representing the walk. So I'm a simple cardiologist. I grew up, born and raised here in Columbus and never really strayed out of the state. I practice in a great group of cardiologists for Ohio Health out of Dublin and Polaris. And Walk with a Doc was started in November of 2004. I did my training at Ohio State, both residency and fellowship. And while I was there, was really realizing more and more each year the power of just simple, moderate physical activity, and would have really prolonged conversations with my patients about the importance of it. And the conversations, I thought, were going extremely well, and both of us, would leave that appointment motivated and excited for the next steps. And I realized it took me quite a while, a number of years, to realize that these conversations, which I thought were going well, were actually very ineffective, as the patients would come back for their 6 or 12-month follow-up, and I realized that the behavior towards physical activity had not really changed for the most part. So I kept throwing different things at the patients as far as, how about if I give you a call in 10 weeks and see how things were going, and incentives. And finally we found something that took hold, and that was with this patient 0 in 2004, I asked them if they'd be willing to join my family and I at the park. I wanted that patient to have to say no to my face.
And his answer was?
That sounds really good. Tell me more. And I just made it up. So, and it was November. And, whether it was that cold, slushy stuff. And then I I told her, can I get your email? And over the next 6 months, I collected probably 800 to 1,000 emails of my patients, and that were, agreed, and was sending out a goofy newsletter on Fridays to try and keep them interested, motivated. And that newsletter still exists to this day. And then finally, in April, we had our first walk at Sharon Woods, and we had over 100 people, and we've never really looked back.
David, that had to be really, I don't want to say stressful, emotional, that you had 800 to 1,000 patients you were working with on a regular basis and trying to motivate that many people all at the same time in kind of the same way. I mean, that's way over the top.
I don't know about that. I do know that I didn't want to play that charade of having these conversations where both parties agreed, yeah, we're going to start, walking or whatever the favorite flavor of physical activity was, and then realizing it, just knowing it really wasn't going to happen in all likelihood. So we just had to do something else.
Right. Bottom line, it's accountability, isn't it, though? That's what you're trying to instill, right?
Yeah. Physical activity has done a lot for me in my life. And, I imagine we'll get to this as far as, the benefits, and really transformed the way I would go through my days and how I felt. And I really wanted everyone that I came across in the office, at least, to be able to experience that same joy.
Right.
Right. And I think, too, how wonderful that a patient has a doctor who's willing to have a terrific conversation with them.
Right.
That is incredible.
That's very nice of you. And I am one of, I'm just a normal Joe. There are many, many like me all over the world, thank God, because they are starting their own chapters, which is awesome.
Right, which goes to our next question, and that is, you've gone from one chapter to over 500 chapters around the world. So this formula is working. And getting a medical practitioner with a group of patients, that is just phenomenal. I love my docs and would never have thought that I was going to meet up with them outside of their office. So what is it about this merging of doctors and patients on a walk that works so well? Where's that tie coming from? Let
me first start with the doctors or healthcare professionals. Let me clarify. There's probably 98% are doctors, and then we also have nurse practitioners, and we have another branch called Just Walk, powered by Walk with a Doc, which are for those, exceptional nurses, pharmacists, health coaches that really want to do this. So for us as docs, it gives us a sense of purpose. A lot of the way I felt viscerally this was why I went into medicine, was the feeling I get when I'm at Walk with a Doc, and that's the feedback we're getting from our docs. So for docs, that sense of purpose is really important. For the guests, what we've been told is that they really appreciate, no copay, no fear of bad lab results, no waiting room. They can show up whenever they want. And a lot of the guests want a second opinion. We get that a lot. So that's, I think, what maybe the hook tool is to get them in. But the secret sauce and what gets them to come back every Saturday is the social connection with others, not necessarily the walk. Hopefully, I have a lot of friends there, and I'm terribly grateful for that. That's the best thing for me. But it's Bob knowing that Joe will be there waiting for him.
Right.
Sure. Well, with the past year, I'm going to even go year and a half, we've kind of had to go back to zero in regards to what we can do for physical activity. Can you give us some specific physical changes that are occurring as we pound the pavement, as we start doing the walk, and as we are walking now?
Sure. So being a weight-bearing exercise is wonderful for our muscles, our bones. I think there is a misconception out there that walking, isn't enough, but it is. It is definitely enough, and the studies bear that out over and over. So it also makes our heart much more efficient. It pretty much, you name it, walking or whatever physical activity you enjoy will take care of it.
Well, and so we've got the physical, but also we're really strengthening our mental abilities too, and our mental state. Depression and mental struggles have been just part of the pandemic this past year. Can you give us some examples of how members have become more empowered, and that mental struggles are that they have found over the past year where walking has really helped?
Yeah, so you're exactly right. The anxiety and depression I'm seeing in the office, even as a cardiologist, is overwhelming. And, the fun thing about, in addition to strengthening our bones and our muscles, we release some very important neurotransmitters that make everything better, and that's dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, oxytocin. These are all very powerful endogenous chemicals, meaning we're releasing them, and they make everything better. So you're exactly right. There is a 40-some% reduction in anxiety, depression. It improves our self-esteem. It's underrated as to what physical activity can do for our mental health. And I think we all need to be out there doing this right now more than ever.
Sure. I was going to say over the past X amount of months, however we want to classify the pandemic length, I know over the last spring and summer and fall, more and more people walking in our neighborhood. But they were, you can only pair up with the people that are in your house, or you're walking alone. Can you describe the various ways that Walk with a Doc has pivoted to continue serving clients and patients with new ideas and ways to remain engaged in their walking program with each other, even if they are alone?
We do encourage people, still get out as long as you mask up and do the 6 feet. It's really important and can motivate to walk with, either in your pod or safely outside your pod. We also pivoted to do the virtual event, and I really appreciate you both doing the Kilimanjaro and the avocado walk, and that is a wonderful way to connect and also get credit. So it's really nice to know if you're out raking leaves for 45 minutes, you can go in and move your avatar further down into the canyon. It's a fun thing.
It actually was while we were doing Grand Canyon, Columbus was getting a lot of snow. So I was way ahead on my walk because of all the snow I was shoveling. So I appreciated the fact that you gave us those alternatives. It worked very well for me.
Great. I'm glad to hear that.
So we're talking about walking is very effective for individuals who are unable to do more strenuous exercises, older adults or those recuperating from possible injury or who are in physical therapy or other challenges. Do you have any idea on the average age of the members of Walk with a Doc? And do the benefits of walking differ by age group, or do you see differences in patients by their age?
It's a really good question. Our average age is in the mid to late 50s, and the benefits are pretty universal across the age spectrum. You would think there'd be differences, but nothing really significant. I think the main takeaway there is it's never too late to start. So don't give up. If you're, in your 80s and you haven't done anything, it's never too late to get the same benefits as a 20-year-old.
Fabulous.
All right. Well, as with any physical activity, even if it's gardening or whatever the case might be, you do need to be physically ready, have some correct, clothing and clothes, and also be mentally prepared. What tips do you have for individuals wanting to start a walking program? How do they best prepare themselves?
Yeah, I think it's good to set the bar low. Baby steps
Sure.
are really great. James Clear is a Columbus guy who wrote a great book on habits. I forget the name of the book, but James Clear is awesome stuff. And he talks about, I think in there, people even say on day one, all you're supposed to do is lace up your shoes and put them on and just get that small win. I'm not sure about that, but I am all for just keeping it easy. I'll often tell patients just try to get to the mailbox. Personally, I love music. I know a ton of us do, and I think that's a helpful way to be active. Joining a group, as you mentioned, is that accountability, and knowing others are going to be there for you is extremely powerful. I also recommend a pedometer to my patients. There's some really great pedometers that are very reasonable, just a few dollars, and that helps keep us honest. And I also recommend when we work out or do these walks on consecutive days to reward yourself and just to help with that positive feedback.
Sure. And I would suggest too, wink, wink, that, if you're looking at walking 25, 30 minutes, our podcast is a great companion. We're typically about a half an hour. So, if you have to walk alone, bring Carol and me and now the doc along. And for this episode, listen to it over and over and over again.
You did not know you were going to be part of our commercial, did you? So to kind of continue on what you were just saying about starting low, joining a group, because not only can you commiserate together, you could actually have fun together. Exercising, we're getting the message that 150 minutes a week of exercise 5 days a week is really sort of the goal for good health. Is that true with walking? Is 150 minutes a week? Do you have to do more, less, and do you have any suggestions on building up to that 150 minutes? We start low. What's the next step?
Yeah. So 150 is the magic hurdle as far as all these miraculous benefits and cancer reduction, Alzheimer's reduction, all that. So let's say you're at, I recommend increasing 10% a week. And so for the person who's just simply doing 50 minutes over a week, which is a fantastic start, 55 minutes the next week, and over 60 the next, and then you'll be at 150 before you know it. Mm-hmm. But that lowers the risk of injury.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think everybody knows that walking and exercise can strengthen your heart, bones, fight off diseases, obesity, diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure. I hear that every year I go in to see my doc, and it's like, are you walking enough? You can actually bring that down a few points if you just get out and a little bit more exercise. It's kind of a question, why don't we do it? I've heard people talk about that it's a habit. It's that if you start to do it, your brain actually kind of fights you on it because, like, what are you doing? This isn't what we do, sort of thing. So do you have any guidance on how we can just get started and then keep ourselves on that right path?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. That's exactly correct. There's a wonderful new book on this called Exercised by Daniel Lieberman, who's he's at Harvard. He's an evolutionary biologist and really helped start the barefoot movement. But he addresses that beautifully in his book. But just the same thing. It's really what's simplest is best. And I think the number one thing is going with a friend. And there have been countless times where I'll look down at my pedometer and we put on, a few miles just because we were talking about our favorite movies, books, and whatever, and you just lose track. So it's that social connection outside, walking, that's about as good as it gets, and it doesn't have to be much more complicated than that, which is a beautiful thing.
Right. I think that's the one thing about walking is not only are you, it is the simplest form of exercise. We can all get out there and move around, but it gives you a different look at your neighborhood. Usually you're driving through your neighborhood. So in actuality, you can walk through and see your neighbors and talk to folks. And even if you're out walking alone, it still makes it for a better opportunity and experience.
Couldn't agree more.
When we were doing walk with a doc at Kilimanjaro and the Grand Canyon, as I mentioned earlier, it was so much easier to get all my steps in because I was shoveling snow and raking leaves last fall. I mean, there were different ways that I could get that experience in. So really, I was just kind of wondering, what walking with a doc is the most important goal of this organization, but really, you were kind of giving us a new look at other kinds of ways of getting our 150 minutes in.
Yeah, so I give a lot of credit to Racery, the platform that did the virtual challenge, and it's a wonderful thing to be able to convert that. All the things we do where we may not want to run upstairs to grab another load of laundry and bring it down, all that stuff pays off. Someone once told me they try and make their life, instead of making it simpler, they try and make it harder. And that's something I try and follow every day. And I think it really works. Just trying to make things a little more, difficult. The simplistic things we always hear about are parking far away from the grocery or taking the stairs. But it really is true with everything. And then over time, things get much easier. And we come to realize that for those that aren't currently doing it, how beneficial that is and the huge improvement it makes in our life and how we feel.
Right. As we're kind of winding down on our conversation, I wanted to just ask if there were other tips or things or ideas that you wanted to make sure our audience hears today that we haven't really addressed.
Be proud of who you are right now, and just by going out and just doing a simple thing like walking, understand that you are doing the same thing as the person that's running by you. You are getting the same benefit. And if walking's not your thing and it's not for everyone, but you like, water aerobics, for example, that is doing incredible stuff as well. So it will lead you to a better life. You want to release those neurotransmitters that I mentioned. They just make everything fantastic. So that's about it. We would love to have you as part of Walk with a Doc. It's free. It's in a lot of locations. Our website's walkwithadoc.org, and the more the merrier. We have a lot of wonderful people, and we're looking forward to having even more wonderful people join us.
Yeah, what's on the horizon to expand the chapters? Can you give us an insight on maybe what the next few months hold?
Yeah, I love talking about that stuff. So as we thaw out from this pandemic, I'm finding that the requests, which had gone down from about 100 a month, they stayed around 20 to 25 for the last 12 months. They are now up to they were 40 last month, 60, on pace for 60 some this month. So these chapters, we're looking to get to 1,000 pretty quickly.
Wow.
We're in wonderful conversations with some really incredible partners that we'll be updating on soon. Arel Jackson, who's been a guest, has been a superstar, along with a woman that has been the most important person in Walk with a Doc for the last 7 years, Rachel Habash. And then we have Brian Romy, who is just phenomenal, amazes me every day as he's starting so many chapters and just got this wonderful smile on his face all the time. So every day for me is a gift with this thing since, that patient zero in November of 2004. So I've been given a gift through the walk, and we're trying everything we can to repay that for the joy it brings into our lives.
Walk with Doc has been phenomenal, and I've been telling folks all the time, to look in and get with a group. I do have to say Saturday mornings are not the best time for me to be awake. So I've been walking on my own, but now I'm going to have to probably try to check out and see who's walking near me and get in with a group. But Dr. David, thank you so much. Thanks your team. Walk with the Doc team is phenomenal. And to Aurel, who connected us for this podcast today, who's one of our favorite people. To all of our listeners, our podcast show notes will have contact information for the Walk with the Doc programs. And so please check it out. There's also going to be a resource sheet with information. Don't hesitate to contact them if you have any questions. So Dr. David, again, thank you for joining us today.
Carol, Brett, thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for listening to Looking Forward Our Way. We'd like to ask a favor from you. Would you give us some feedback on our podcast?
We've made it really easy to do so. Click on the link in our episode show notes. That link will take you to our podcast Google My Business page. Now, you may have to sign into your Google account.
From there, we'd appreciate your feedback on the podcast overall, feedback on a specific episode, or a suggestion on what you would like to see us cover in a future episode.
All your feedback is really appreciated. Your comments only help us create episodes that will keep us all looking forward our way.